As Dorn's first light barely pierced through the lingering mist, Einar stood atop his longship with a sense of purpose that was both fearless and serene in equal measure. The wooden vessel beneath him groaned softly under their combined weight as they embarked on yet another journey towards an uncertain horizon, where legends whisper promises of gold-laden shores beyond the misty coasts of England. The cold, damp air clung to his skin like a second layer and carried with it tales from faraway lands through its crisp toucher testament to days spent on open seas under starlit skies that seemed forever unchanging yet always in motion. The taste of salt hung heavy around him as the sea spray mingled with perspiration, a constant companion upon his face and hands throughout these endless hours at helm when others found rest within their bed's embrace. Einar let out an exhale that mirrored this tranquil acceptance of solitude, a release from the thoughts that often plagued him during times spent in silent contemplation aboard his vessel, with nothing but waves for company and skies painted by fading sunsets as their backdrop. His heart held a rhythm not unlike those found within these wooden walls of home, yet here on deck under the grey canvas above it seemed to beat slower tempo dictated more by necessity than desire. After all, who could deny that which was essential for survival? As Einar gazed at his reflection upon this expanse, where water met sky merged with earth beneath footfalls echoing across wooden planks, he saw himself not just as a Viking warrior, but also an adventurer seeking fortune and glory beyond the safety of their Norse homeland. The ocean's surface shimmered like molten silver in places, while other parts remained calmly undisturbed, a reminder that nature held dominion over all men, regardless of brawn or cunning wit possessed by those such as Einar who dared venture beyond their realm for wealth and tales to tell upon return. But tonight's journey was different. A palpable sense of anticipation hung heavy within his bones, even as the mist clung tightly around him, shrouding both sight and sound from prying eyes at home waiting with anxious hearts beneath their thatched roofs, where Einar had once been known. With each stroke through water-dense fog, he felt like an extension himself, his arms guiding this wooden entity forward towards destiny or doom, as the waves whispered secrets only heard by those daring enough to listen while sailing into uncharted waters under watchful moonlight's gaze that seemed just a touch too keen on observing all. Einar reflected upon how tales of riches and treasures had captivated his youth, how every heartbeat quickened with excitement at the thought such wealth might be discovered beyond these very shores, promising not only material gains, but adventure that could etch one's name into history itself. And yet here he was once more in this endless cycle of hope and despair as memories flooded back like waves upon his psyche. Tales told by firelight within families where children dreamt nightly amidst their parents, grandparents sharing stories passed down through generations, or time when wealth meant survival rather than opulence. And tonight's journey was no different in that respect for Einar, who had seen the world change around him while remaining unchanged at its core. He too felt like a relic of an era where fortunes were earned through bravery and might, not just cunning or trade alone, a time when tales, spoken aloud, carried weight upon one's return home. As if on cue with the thoughtful silence that enveloped him further by thickening fog, which seemed to choke out all else from existence as he stood sentinel over his longship, Einar let himself drift into memories where once a boy dreamt of these very adventurous, or time when tales, spun around campfires, were not just stories but lifelines that promised an escape from the harsh reality beyond their settlements' wooden walls and fields. And in this moment, between wakefulness and slumber, Einar knew deep within his heart, as he had known all along, that whether riches or glory awaited them upon these fog-enshrouded shores was inconsequential compared to the life lived boldly outside one's comfort zone. For true wealth lay not in coins but experiences that would be etched forever into memory and shared with kin back home through tales told by firelight within families where children dreamt nightly amidst their parents, grandparents sharing the fog rolled in with a thick velvet cloak as if it were mourning something lost to time and memory, a shroud for both nightfall itself and any dream that might dare escape into reality. In its embrace, Einar felt his heartbeat syncopate like gentle waves against the hull of their longship, each pulse a note in an ancient symphony played out before seas untouched by modernity's relentless march forward. It was during these quiet moments that he could hear most clearly distant humming voices across waters where once they sought riches and glory now seemed mere whispers beneath the mists of change. Yet their essence remained as resolute within him as ever before. a call to adventure in an age when daring was currency. As he stood sentinel over his vessel, Einar allowed himself another journey into times past, her youthful boy with eyes wide and full of untarnished wonder, gazing upon the open sea, for what lay beyond its horizon-filled expanse promised him stories to fill life's empty spaces back home, where hardships were as commonplace companions. The tales told by firelight during those evenings spoke not only of conquest, but also kinship, or tapestry woven with threads that connected each generation, binding them together through shared ordeals and triumphant returns from the fathomless depths below, where every storm weathered was a verse in their family sagar. But now, as he stood overlooking his ship's mast amidst this sea of quiet reflection, Einar felt an unfamiliar sensation or tug at his soul that came not from the comforting embrace of routine, but beckoned him towards a horizon, unknown and distant, shores yet explored. It was then he noticed them, ethereal figures emerging like phantoms through braided sea foam, their silhouettes dancing upon waves as they approached with purposeful strides, their band united by the singular desire to chase horrors beyond conventional bonds of blood and land. Curiosity ignited within Einar's breast that had lain dormant for too long under layers concealing fear, pride, and duty. He found himself drawn like a moth towards flame or beacon promising adventure over the familiar warmth back home, where his kin waited with bated breath. With each step taken inland, their footfalls carried him further from what was known into realms of potential untold, territories claimed not by conquest but exploration, as they sought to chart these fog-enshrouded shores together under the watchful eyes and blessing of Einar's kin. As daylight faded, he realized that his journey had shifted from within himself for pilgrimage toward understanding, where true wealth lay not in hoards amassed but experiences shared with those who held him dear. A treasure trove unlocked through stories told by firelight amidst family gathered around campfires deep into the heart of night. With newfound resolve, Einar embraced this call to adventure that beckoned like an old friend whispering tales not yet lived, her journey across vast and mysterious waters towards lands unseen, where he might find himself changed from within as well beyond, a soul reborn in the crucible of exploration alongside kin who sought no riches but stories enough for lifetimes. And so, with heart full to brim over dreams yet unfathomed by his eyes, and spirit eagerly stretching towards skies unclouded save for fleeting wisps that drift away like forgotten whispers lost upon the wind, he knew then as never before that whether gold or glory awaited them on this fog-enshrouded shore was inconsequential compared to a life boldly lived outside one's comfort zone. For true wealth lay not in coins but experiences that would be etched forever into memory and shared with kin back home through tales told by firelight within families where children dreamt nightly amidst their parents, grandparents sharing stories of days gone past, a lineage undiminished despite the relentless march towards an uncertain future. And in this moment between wakefulness and slumber, when his thoughts mingled with those of bygone eras where fortunes were earned through bravery, not merely cunning or trade alone, Einar understood that he stood at a crossroads, one path bearing towards the safety of familiar shores illuminated only by memory's glow, another leading toward misty mornings and dusky twilights where tales the journey thus far tested the sinews of Einar's body as much as it did those of his soul. Each step taken upon unknown earth was a testament to bravery, not simply for discovery but for transcending fear itself, the very bedrock on which civilizations rise and fall. As he ventured forth into this fog-enshrouded shore where the sea met sky in an embrace of misty mornings and dusky twilights, his eyes tracing patterns only visible to those who dared look beyond fear's shroud, Einar felt a kinship with explorers before him, those whose names lived on not just as echoes but as legacies. Within the heart of this untouched land lay secrets whispered in reverence by nature itself, offering solace to souls lost and found along its waysides. Einar paused under an ancient oak, its gnarled roots clawing into earth like fingers, seeking wisdom from depths unfathomable, while twisted branches reached skyward as if yearning for celestial guidance in the dance of life around it, each leaf a testament to resilience and interconnectedness. As night descended upon this foreign world with its own unique rhythm, Einar felt no fear nor loneliness within his chest. Instead, he found companionship among kindred spirits unseen, but deeply understood in every sigh of the wind through ferns that seemed to nod knowingly at passers-by. In a glade where fireflies cast their glow upon faces washed by moonlight and stars above. Einar gathered kin who shared tales steeped in courage, each word spoken binding them closer together as threads woven into the fabric of an ongoing saga that transcended time, a tapestry colored with every hue imaginable. It wasn't long before Einar learned from a wise old druid about a path veiled not just by fog, but also in riddles and ancient law. His trail led to the heart of an enchanted forest where magic breathed through flora as if each blossom bore its own spirit. Here he encountered creatures ethereal, their eyes held galaxies within their gaze while they spoke not with words, but in melodies that weaved around his soul like liquid silver streams flowing over stones smoothed by the touch of time itself. These were beings who had thrived long before humans walked upright, and whose tales now lay dormant amidst roots entwined deep within earthen tombs. The forest was a living mossacre place, where light filtered through canopies to paint patterns upon the ground that shifted with Einar's thoughts. Here he found himself walking alongside phantom companions born of imagination, their silent footfalls imprinting not on earth but within his heart. As dusk turned into velvety night and stars wheeled overhead in a slow ballet across constellations unseen by those who lived ensnared solely within the grip of modernity, Einar understood that this journey fraught with uncertainty, fearless encounters with otherness beyond comprehension, yet brimming with moments saturated in wonder and enlightenment. Each dawn brought forth new horizons, where mountains bore witness to sunrise prayers offered by hands of flesh or spirit. Einar found himself partaking as one among equals, world itself an altar that humbly acknowledged the sanctity inherent within every living soul's breath. As he traversed landscapes painted with nature's raw beauty, his senses became attuned to subtler frequencies of existence. Each rustle in underbrush or distant call from unknown birdsong was a note played by unseen maestros conducting symphonies that resonated within the depths of one's being. Beneath an amethyst-hued twilight, Einar discovered ruins where civilizations had once flourished in a society whose echoes reverberated through time not as whispers, but vibrant conversations, with as Einar traced his fingers along ancient stone and moss-covered walls of forgotten temples that stood guard over secrets long buried. He felt a connection to those who had once walked these same paths under full moonlight many centuries ago. The silent stones seemed alive with the touch of history's gentle whispers. They spoke not in words, but through an intangible bond between souls across ages, or bridge built from love and legacy that defied time itself, allowing Einar to reach into epochs past where spirits roamed free without fear or sorrow. In a grove hidden away within the heart of this timeless landscape lay Phelan's treehouse. Its wooden beams held tight by roots as old as legend, while leaves danced above in rhythmic rustles, with each breeze that caressed them like soft hands playing upon one's cheek. Einar, weary from daylight explorations and the weight of his encounters, both mundane and mystical alike, a man straddling worlds between fantasies' embrace and reality's firm ground, found respite beneath its sheltering boughs as night's curtain began to fall upon him once more. Taking a seat on the earth-cradled bench that lay near Phelan, Einar closed his eyes against darkness encroaching around him. He surrendered himself fully into dreamscapes woven from threads of both tangible and ethereal experience, as his mind painting vibrant tapestries upon which fantastical characters roamed freely without the constraints imposed by societal norms or cultural expectations. Here, in this transcendent realm, where Einar was an equal among equals, regardless of origin, he found himself conversing with mythic beings whose wisdom far exceeded that afforded to mere mortals, or counsel formed from shadows and light, which guided him towards deeper understanding not just about self, but also existence's grand design. As the night deepened, a symphony arose within these ethereal chambers. Each creature's voice blended seamlessly into one another, creating harmonies that resonated throughout Einar's soul and echoed in his heartstrings as if he were their instrument, or melody shared between realms where every note sung was an intimate whisper meant only for him to hear. Time seemed both infinite yet fleeting, stretching out before him like a river flowing through the ages that would never cease its journey. This place existed outside of Einar's grasp, but remained within his essence, a sanctuary where dreamers could roam unfettered by earthly bonds or temporal chains. Einar now fully submerged in these transcendent experiences which danced upon the borders between waking life and slumbering fantasies, found himself not as a solitary traveller, but rather an integral part of something greater and interconnected web where every soul contributed their own unique essence towards creating harmony within this mystical universe. It was here he realized that, just like each star above him carried its light across the cosmos to touch distant worlds unseen by human eyes, so too did his spirit reach outward from himself into others through shared experiences and understanding and exchange of energy, where love could transcend even death itself, while memories became immortalized within these sacred grounds. As dawn approached with tendrils of golden light, Einar opened his eyes to greet the arrival of day. He felt a profound sense of gratitude for this journey which had led him from worldly concerns and fears into realms where divinity itself took form or place beyond measure yet infinitely within reach through one's willingness to explore its depths. He stood, not as mere visitor, but rather guardian, who bore witness to the tales that would forever echo in this hallowed ground. For he knew now more than ever before how interconnected all things truly were, regardless of their origins or nature, as their tapestry woven from threads both seen and unseen, where every strand held significance, no matter its size. With heart full and spirit uplifted by the experiences that had unfolded around him, Einar made his way back towards Phelan's treehouse once more as morning sunlight spilled over rolling hillsides like molten gold streaming from ancient skees, a reminder of life's ever-turning wheel, which brought both endings and beginnings alike. As he ventured forth on this path that led beyond the confines of his own understanding, Einar carried with him not just memories, but also a newfound sense of purpose. For within these magical encounters lay wisdom far greater than any scribed upon dusty tomes or whispered through time. As Einar approached Phelan's treehouse once more under the morning sun that seemed to bless his return with renewed warmth, he felt a tranquil assurance wrap around him like the silk of night itself, a serenity born from embracing both light and shadow in equal measure. The path beneath his feet had borne witness to countless stories. Each step forward now seemed as purposeful as it was familiar. Yet there lay ahead a journey that promised untold narratives just waiting for him within the treehouse's ancient walls, where magic pulsed like lifeblood through its very essence. Upon reaching his sanctuary of solace and wisdom, Einar found himself greeted by Phelan's presence, their spirit as immutable in form yet ever-changing at the core, a guardian who had always watched over this sacred haven from times when stars were young or ancient. The air around them hummed with energy that resonated within their very beings. It was an unspoken acknowledgment of Einar's transformation and his readiness to once again traverse realms unknown for the sake of knowledge, not conquest or pilgrimage in search of understanding beyond mere mortal comprehension. Together they sat beneath the boughs that formed a canopy woven from threads more vibrant than any seen by human eyes. Leaves shimmered with dew and glimmer like jewels, each droplet reflecting fragments of light as if containing prismatic universes within themselves. The treehouse stood silent yet communicative, its ancient timbers creaking softly in the breeze that whispered secrets from afar to those who would listen closely enough, with heart and soul attuned not only to hear, but feel its message resonating through time-worn roots intertwined beneath them. Einar's gaze roamed over Phelan, taking note of the subtle shifts in expression or dance that spoke volumes more than words ever could, an exchange transcending language barriers where intuition and wisdom flowed freely between kindred spirits bound by a shared reverence for life's endless cycles. It was here at this sacred threshold they began their daily ritual, to draw forth the essences of yore, distilling them into potions that would allow Einar access to memories not his own, or communion with echoes from past and future who had trodden these paths in times when magic coursed through veins as naturally as blood. With each draught vial containing a moment suspended between realms, Einar felt the weight of history pressing upon him, yet he welcomed it not with trepidation, but humble curiosity that sought to understand how threads from different times and lives could weave together into one grand tapestry. They spoke tales of empires rising on pillars of ambition before crumbling beneath their own hubris, stories where heroes bore hearts both virtuous and flawed, a reminder that within each being lay a constellation of complexities reflecting the same universal struggle for balance between light and darkness. As hours waned into twilight's embrace, Einar delved deeper into these narratives, where gods walked as mortals among their kin, He learned to navigate realms beyond human conception without losing sight that his own essence remained intact, a vessel for experiences transcending the boundaries of time and space. It was a gift bestowed upon him not by chance but through an unwavering commitment to seekers' ways, where every soul journeyed forth bearing seeds sown in fertile ground that fed into life entirety without knowing their origin or destination would ever truly be known apart from the act of being nurtured. The tree house stood as a testament to this eternal passage, or place where past, present, and future intertwined like braided threads, its very foundation an alchemical blend that melded ancient wisdom with insights gained through epochs yet unseen by humanity's eyes. Within these sacred precincts lay the essence of world-building itself, a realm where every leaf carried history, and each whisper between branches held lessons meant to guide those willing enough on their quest for understanding. A place Einar had come not only as pilgrim, but also guardian, who bore witness with reverent humility. As night's veil descended upon them both wrapped in the treehouse's protective embrace, Phelan shared stories of forgotten lands where shadows danced freely under silvered moons and sunsets painted skies ablaze, a reminder that even within darkness there existed beauty beyond compare. The guardian's tales spoke not as we journeyed through time within the treehouse's embrace. Einar and Phelan found themselves in a world where history was alive, their place that twisted reality with legend at every turn of their shared tales. With each whispering leaf telling its own tale from ages past or yet to come, they wove stories together like skilled artisans crafting tapestries for the mind's eye. The treehouse pulsed gently in rhythm with Einar's heartbeat as he absorbed Phelan's words of lands where civilizations rose and fell at dusk, only to rise again come dawn, cyclical dance choreographed by the very essence of nature itself. Here was a world within which time flowed like honey in summer's heat, each drop sweet with echoes from epochs not yet begun or long since faded into memory's soft corners, as if eternity folded upon its own edge and whispered secrets to those who would listen closely. Phelan spoke of empires that soared on wings woven from the dreams of poets, where every spire reached for stars yet unnamed by man's ambition. There were cities built atop clouds cradled in sunset skies, and streets paved with dew-kissed leaves shimmering under moonlight, or civilization that grew upward toward the heavens as much out of reverence as necessity, their aspirations mirroring those found nestled deep within Einar's own heart. The guardian leaned forward in earnest revelation, and spoke softly now of a time when humanity stood at the cusp between darkness that threatened to swallow whole, or light which promised hope's eternal dawn, where unity was sought as fervently as it had been lost, or tale not unlike Einar's own search for understanding in this world beyond words. As their stories ebbed and flowed around them like gentle waves lapping at the shore of consciousness, Phelan wove an ode to a forgotten love that blossomed amidst conflict, as fierce as fire, but tender as morning's first light, her testament to human emotion's capacity for both destruction and transcendent beauty. They spoke next of dreamers who painted with colors invisible, where the palette held shades untouched by sunlight or shadow alike, a world that thrived on imagination as its lifeblood, a realm Einar felt he had entered not through doorways, but within himself after all. And in this nocturnal symposium of soulful communion, Phelan's voice grew tender with the weight of shared humanity's journey of love lost and found, as surely as seasons turned their endless cycle from winter to spring once more upon these very branches they now rested under. A hush fell between them when he recounted a tale where time itself was but another river in which souls might swim, forging paths through currents that carried thoughts and feelings beyond the limitations of one lifetime or world, a reminder to both Einar and Phelan that they were not alone on their quest. As hours passed like minutes within this eternal moment between tree trunk and skyline, tales flowed from heart to ear until it seemed as though time itself had paused in deference to the treehouse's sanctity, or sacred refuge where history was but a tapestry woven by those who dared dream. Within these stories lay threads of truth about Einar's own life, experiences that he carried within him like ember-glowing amulets against encroaching night. His heart swelled with the realization that perhaps in sharing tales was where understanding began to blossom like seedlings reaching for sunlight through canopy leaves. He felt a kinship not just as guardian of this treehouse, but as its very soul itself intertwined within these narratives. Every story he shared became an offering back into the crucible from which they sprung forth, like myths reborn in human form and alchemy, turning listening ears to vessels for experiences transcending time and space. The guardians' tales closed with a reminder of all that lay beyond this hallowed ground, where their shared journey continued amidst the very pulse of life's eternal flow. Past memories melded into present moments which would themselves become tomorrow's lore cycle, as enduring and beautifully complex as time itself. As night deepened its hold around them both, within the treehouse's protective embrace, Phelan shared stories of forgotten lands where shadows danced freely under. In chapter 7 of our tale, within that ancient treehouse sheltered by Time's own hands and whispering leaves, Phelan settled into his favorite armchair as a gentle twilight painted shadows across its aged wood grain, a perfect canvas for tales untold. The air was ripe with the scent of moss and damp earth after recent rain. It seemed that even nature itself conspired to blanket their world in hushed anticipation, awaiting stories yet spun from his lips like silken threads, binding dreams into reality's tapestry. Phelan's voice was a lullaby as he began weaving the narrative of an ancient city lost beneath waves, or place where history and legend danced in eternal embrace, cradled by forgotten civilizations now buried under sands that time had eroded to whispers but never silenced. His words painted images so vivid they were felt upon fingertips, the coolness of seawater on skin as sunken treasures emerged from their watery crypts through his storytelling, each artifact a testament to lives lived and lost in this submerged Eden that once pulsed with human endeavor. As he spoke of temples carved into cliffsides by hands, both artisan and ambitious, or harmony between man's triumph over nature's mightiest forces, Phelan paused to draw a deep, steadying breath. His heart beat synchronized with the rhythm of waves that ebbed through his mind. He felt as though each crash against coral reefs was an echo from ages past, calling out across time's expanse for recognition and remembrance in present ears, or desire to be seen, heard, understood. In a sigh almost parting with the world outside this sacred treehouse, Phelan recounted tales of star-crossed lovers whose affections spanned continents but were forever ensnared by empires' rise and fall, their undying love an eternal flame that could not be quenched as long as stories lived on in the hearts they touched. He traced delicate lines upon his forearm, each a constellation born of remembered Cicer tapestry, where night sky met earthly woes and joys alike. He was both their weaver and witness to endless cycles that repeated like refrains in an ancient psalm. His narrative then wove through the threads of time towards a great library, its shelves burdened with wisdom amassed by sages who sought answers not just within tomes, but also whispering wings and murmuring streams, or holistic search for understanding that transcended borders drawn on parchment. Phelan closed his eyes as if to see through their pages, the words a bridge across epochs where knowledge flowered like flowers in an endless field under moonlight's gentle gaze. He shared this vision with unshakable conviction because within it lay truth, a reflection of all humanity's pursuit for enlightenment. As night deepened, the treehouse seemed to pulse more strongly around them both. Phelan turned his attention from past glories and present joys towards tomorrow's potential, unfurling like an open book under morning light. His tales were not just recollections, but seeds planted in fertile minds, germinating into new stories that would one day be shared once again within these sacred walls, perpetuating the cycle of storytelling as enduring and resilient as life itself. Each tale a vessel for histories yet to come. He spoke now with gentle assurance about an impending festival or celebration where shadows cast their tales upon faces alight with mirth or sorrow, depending on hearts. Burdens they carried into the nights of revelry and reflection. Music threaded through his words like silver filaments weaving between memories. It was a sound that sang across generations, binding them in shared experience beyond language, a universal tongue spoken by every heartbeat echoing within these walls. The treehouse seemed to hum with life as Phelan recounted the laughter of children chasing fireflies on summer evenings, and elders spinning yarns around crackling fires where wisdom passed like torches in a relay race against forgetfulness, or testament that though time marches forward relentlessly outside these timeless walls, here within this hallowed refuge it stood still for all who would listen. As the night reached its zenith and stars above bore witness to their communion of souls beneath canopy leaves. Watchful eye, Phelan spoke finally of his own lineage as Phelan's tales wove through time like threads in a tapestry of shared history and culture. His voice grew softer yet more intentional with each word. He spoke about upcoming celebrations or festival rooted deep within their traditions but ever evolving. He described how this unique gathering would not merely be an event marked by days on the calendar. It was a living embodiment of heritage, where every note played and step danced upon resonated with ancestral echoes that had traversed through generations like whispers in the windswept fields. As he spoke about this impending festival, Lantern Festival to be precise, there came an almost tangible excitement within his timbre, a reverent anticipation of lighting up faces and hearts alike with memories that would illuminate their path forward as much as they honored the shadows cast by those who had danced before them. The festival's lanterns were not just vessels for flame, but symbols carrying stories across time, each a beacon guiding younger souls to understand and appreciate where they came from, painting history with strokes of colorful light as vibrant hues blossomed into the night sky like petals unfurling in celebration. In his narrative, Phelan didn't just share tales. He recreated the laughter that rippled through generations when young ones chased after glowing orbs as if they were sprites of light themselves, and the warmth felt by elders who sat beside roaring fires recounting legends where heroes faced monsters with only courage in their hearts. It was a reminder, he said tenderly, that while time's river flowed without end beyond these walls, an eternal witness to all human endeavor and folly alike, here within the treehouse they could pause its passage for those willing enough to listen. He spoke of how this annual ceremony would draw people not just from their own lineage, but also welcome strangers, like new seeds carried by the wind, finding fertile ground in which to root anew and thrive. It was a space where barriers dissolved into mist under the caress of shared joy, or place that fostered connections as intricate and vital as mycorrhizal networks beneath forest flaws, or starlings painting patterns on twilight skies with their synchronized flight, indistinguishably yet purposeful. As Phelan's words continued to unravel the fabric of time before the Malum, where past and present were interwoven seamlessly into a future that they themselves would help weave at, his voice echoed with love for all who had been part of this legacy. Yet it was imbued equally with hope for those whose stories might begin to be told. He painted visions not only of the lanterns' journey skyward as silent sentinels against night, but also whispered secrets that they could carry within their own hearts and let loose into the world like dandelion seeds seeking new soil, each one a promise for tomorrow carried on today. And then he spoke of his lineage, not with boastful pride or tales designed to evoke envy, but as narratives that honored every step taken by those who had come before him, of humble beginnings and triumphs over adversity, the trials endured for a better future. He traced back through ancestral paths trodden with footsteps soaked in sweat or dampened by rain under canopies of leaves, where now only memories stood as silent witnesses to their resilience against time's relentless march forward and the eroding touch it could wield on even the mightiest oaks. Phelan spoke tenderly, his voice a lullaby that conjured images not just within themselves, but in minds across lands near and far, a resonance felt as surely as if they were all gathered here under leafy boughs or beside flickering flames of shared tales at the treehouse. As he looked out into an audience seemingly composed entirely of listeners, his eyes met their own, a silent acknowledgement that in each face lay countless stories yet to be told and retold, a reflection not just of him but of all who would continue this legacy for generations unborn or even unknown. The night deepened its embrace around them as the chapter drew towards an end, with Phelan's words lingering like incense smoke that had found rest upon a silent beacon or final note in their shared symphony of stories and traditions held within the sacred space where time itself seemed to stand still under leafy watch. As he closed his narration on the threadbare cloak from his, Phelan's voice trailed off into a hushed reverence for tales yet to come and those already past. An unspoken bond between him and his audience seemed almost tangible in that sacred space beneath the ancient tree where time itself had paused its relentless march. The night's embrace deepened as he looked out upon the mad myriad of souls who found solace here not just for themselves, but also to carry forward a legacy, an echo from their ancestors carried in every word and gesture that honored the past while nurturing seeds for the future. The chapter's end had brought with it a sense of unity among those presenters, shared understanding that they were part of something far greater than themselves. Now came Phelan's turn to close this gathering, his narrative touch upon their memories as gentle and evocative as the caress of autumn wind through bare branches above them in winter's chill, or summer sun-warming dampened boughs with life-giving light. The cloak he had been wearing, a threadbare testament to many seasons, spent under this very canopy, stories absorbed into its fabric as it was folded and refolded through the years by caretakers of history before him, no lay discarded on a nearby log. The audience sat in contemplative silence for several moments after he finished speaking. Their minds were alight with images conjured from his words, each person's thoughts weaving personal connections to Phelan's narrative tapestry as they digested the finality of this chapter towed for a communal pause before moving forward. In that hallowed place where time seemed not merely witnessed but held hostage by nature itself, their quiet reflection was a dance with shadows and echoes born from tales spun under leafy watch centuries prior, when people had come here to gather as one family of the earther, kinship transcending bloodlines. It was in this moment that Phelan felt not just his presence, but also an ancestral spirit, its whispers carried on a breeze through crinkling leaves and dancing flames light flicker within the treehouse's hearth nearby. He recognized himself as part of these eternal gatherings. The cloak, Phelan began in his gentle voice, addressing both their inner selves and those beyond this shared space that felt like home to them, no refuge for stories told not just with words, but through the very heartbeats resonating beneath bark-clad sentinels. For as we stand here together tonight, he continued in his lullaby of a voice, we are reminded by our shared history that though trees may fall and seasons change, their geyser cloak worn for many years will ultimately yield to time's embrace. As the night grew older still and stars became more numerous witnesses above them, Phelan reached within himself before continuing his part in this communal lullaby. Yet he whispered, as if speaking directly into their souls, the essence of who we are as stories, our connections to each other and the land upon which they stand remains untouchable by time's ravages. He paused briefly before continuing with a smile touching his eyes. And so, he said in conclusion, as if sealing their shared pact for now but not forevermore, let us carry these tales within our hearts, passing them from one generation to the next like water flowing through ancient streams and rivers that crisscross this land. With a nod of respect towards each other's listeners who had become his chosen family gathered around him as if in acknowledgement of their shared journey thus far. Phelan's gaze swept across them, seeing not just faces but windows to the myriad worlds within. And remember, he said with a gentle assurance that settled over all like dew upon newly sprouted leaves at dawn's first light, to honor our ancestors and those yet to come by keeping these stories alive. He took his leave, stepping back from the group as if passing on this torch of legacy himself. The cloak may have been left discarded. Its purpose served in telling tales beneath leafy canopies where once stood mighty oaks, now whispered secrets to those who would listen and remember a sacred space that had held them, a treehouse not just as shelter, but also sanctuary for hearts yearning to connect with their roots. As silence returned like the calm after rainfall on parched soil beneath canopies of leaves where now only memories stood in place of ancient oaks, Phelan felt his spirit merge once in Chapter 10 as Phelan gathered his chosen family once more beneath their sacred space of leaves and memories where they had all come together to honor the ancestors with tales told through time-worn voices in unison. He felt a sense of peace envelop him. The world outside continued its endless bustle, its city's heartbeat drumming steadily against their secluded haven, but here amidst ancient oaks and whispered secrets, they had found an anchor to the past as well as a beacon for future generations yet unborn. As night descended with its velvet shroud upon the world beyond these sheltering branches, Phelan began his tale of how their lineage traced back through centuries or saga that wove itself into every fiber of being and bone in each listener's body like a comforting blanket. He spoke not just with words, but also touched souls as if he were passing the embers from one hearth to another, ensuring warmth persisted even when no flames licked at night air's cheek. He described how their ancestors have first arrived on these lands wandering nomads, whose footsteps traced rivers that carved through valleys and who sought out the bountiful earth under a sky so vast it could hold all stories without ever being full of them, just as they hoped to be in time. With each tale he told, Phelan's voice rose like incantation summoning echoes from deep within their shared history. His listeners found themselves journeying back through the ages with him, guided by tales that flowed like rivers and streams which no longer carried water, but whisperings of old souls. The stories danced around them as they listened intently. Fireside gatherings where young ones learned to sing songs their parents had sung, celebrations under moonlight when the stars themselves seemed close enough for handshakes, sharing tales that were passed like treasured heirlooms through generations. Tales of love and loss seasoned with laughter as Phelan wove them intricately into a tapestry so rich in texture it felt almost tangible against their skin. They could see the threads being spun by his words, each one dyed differently yet harmoniously blending together to create patterns that told of resilience and hope. He spoke with reverence about how these stories were not merely recollections, but lifelines, the very sinews connecting them all back through time. For as he narrated the trials faced by their ancestors, they could feel themselves standing shoulder to shoulder against those same adversities and understanding that though times had changed, challenges remained a constant companion. Phelan's voice dipped into melodies of ancient dances, whose footsteps pounded like heartbeats through the ground beneath their feet. He chanted blessings for peace, where there was once fear, a ritual to honor those who came before and ensure that their spirits continued guiding them. He spoke with such fervor, his words painting vivid images of a world less bound by technology's relentless march forward but rooted in the essence of humanity's shared experiences across ages past. It was as if he had unearthed relics from an archaeological dig right there at their feet. He recounted how, during harsh winters, when food grew scarce and darkness threatened to swallow all light within the land, a collective spirit of perseverance kindled flames in every hearth. These were not just tales, but embers that warmed him as they spoke her testament to their ancestors' endurance. Through his storytelling prowess and wisdom imbued with the essence of ages, Phelan helped each listener see themselves reflected within this continuum, for in honoring past trials, through remembrance lay not just a legacy, but also lessons etched into their very being. Each anecdote was like drops on parched soil that held life stories, reviving sprouts of understanding and kinship amongst them all, creating roots to secure themselves firmly in the heritage they carried within as though it were written there for each by Providence itself. This sacred connection transcended mere words spoken aloud. As he wove tales that stretched back through time like threads looping endlessly around spindles of history and tradition, Phelan's listeners felt their own stories intertwining with the ancestors in a silent pact or promise to remember without forgetting, for those who are forgotten become whispers lost on wind currents. As he concluded his tales, into silence that settled over them like dew as Phelan's voice ebbed into a hushed lullaby, his listeners felt themselves being cradled by time as if in an ancient embrace that knew no end of night or daybreak alike. It was during these quiet moments, when the boundary between then and now seemed to dissolve entirely, where present souls found their echoes reverberating through corridors paved with stories untold yet fell so intimately as if they were living them themselves in each heartbeat that carried history forward like a river flowing into tomorrow. The tale of the Great Convergence was one such saga, woven from threads drawn not just from Phelan's own lineage, but also borrowed from oral traditions passed through generations or tapestry, where every strand held vibrant hues painted by ancestors who traversed realms unseen yet felt in the depth of one's being. It was said that during an era when stars dimmed and shadows grew bold, a conclave of sages gathered under moonlight's silver glow to commune with forces beyond our ken, and therein lay their shared endeavor as they sought guidance for prosperity in times where sustenance seemed but fleeting hope. These nightly gatherings were sacred pacts, each spoken word a testament carved into the ether itself, and amidst these guardians of law stood Phelan's great-great-grandfather Einar, whose eyes shimmered with visions that stretched beyond horizons. In his tales lay wisdom, as ancient druids once did in their communion with nature, and through him the listeners saw themselves not merely spectators, but participants woven into this intricate dance of existence, where every thread had its purpose. One fateful night, when winter's bite was sharpest upon the land, Einar spoke truths that pierced to core. "We are all children born anew each year. Our essence remains as constant as cycles." With these words, he unveiled a prophecy foretold that they who honored their past trials through remembrance held the power not just of survival but transcendence. So it came to pass that when darkness threatened and light seemed lost within earthen bounds, Eilar's kin sought warmth in shared tales, where ancestral spirits danced with them beneath starlit skies. Their hearth fires became altars upon which they offered thanks for blessings past as well those yet unclaimed. In these stories of toil and triumph were lessons learned or legacy, not just inherited, but lived anew, each generation a custodian holding the lantern aloft against encroaching voids where fear once dwelt. As Phelan narrated this particular chronicle from Eilar's life on that long ago night when Frost first kissed their ancestral home in its cruel embrace, he saw his listeners huddle closer towed for as if by sharing warmth they might also share the strength of generations. He spoke of foraging journeys where each step was a prayer upon snowy soils, how wisdom flowered from scarcity like nightshade in moonlight's kiss, and resilience blossomed amidst adversity as flowers do within spring's tender rain. The ancient spirit Eilean had once said to them, in remembering our ancestors' live wether, laughter mingled with the wind, their tears sealed in ice. It was this very essence that Phelan sought, his every word a key turning within time's own lock. His listeners were not just witnesses to history, but its inheritors now calling forth echoes of yesteryears, as if it had always resided close at hand where the present and past melded in symphony like intertwined streams meandering through memories. Fertile ballads. They understood that their stories were not separate from Eilean's, but rather extensions, branches growing forthward to touch unseen horizons where future generations might roam their own paths yet unwalked by fleshly feet across time-worn trails of legacy left for them as signposts. With the patience that only an endless night can teach one how to cherish each flickering candle flame, Phelan continued his tale through darkness. Embrace until it felt like they too could see Eilean standing before their gathered kinner pillar of strength and solace in frosted silence. He spoke the words that had once been passed down from lips weathered by seasons until chapter 11. Phelan had woven tales of valor and honor with his silvered tongue as if painting scenes on an endless canvas that stretched beyond horizon's reach into a twilight sky, a realm where night's velvet cloak held the world in its gentle grip. The young ones listened, entranced by stories not just told, but lived through echoes of their lineage, tales from when Eilean roamed freely amongst them and time flowed like a meandering river that knew no bounds, and hurriedly it coursed through the ages to touch each shore with its ancient rhythms. As Phelan's voice lulled his audience into reverie, he spoke of Eilean's journey backward in time before their very eyes, a path that wove like silver threads across epochs and histories intertwined a tapestry vibrant with the hues of countless sunsets. Phelan's narrative was an invitation to traverse these timeless corridors, where each footfall could awaken echoes buried in silence's heart, a silent promise that they were not alone upon this enduring pilgrimage through history and memory, alike a journey embarked with every breath drawn deep within the folds of night. As he concluded his chronicle's latest chapter, Phelan paused to let their imaginations stretch further than ever before into Eilean's world, a realm where time danced and twirled like leaves caught in an autumnal zephyr, each turn revealing more of the ancestral saga that was eternally unfolding. They were now custodians, their hands not merely holding but reaching through layers of yesteryear to rekindle embers long thought extinguished beneath ashes cold and dark, a call for guardianship resonating in every heartbeat within the congregation, or sacred trust bestowed upon them with each shared tale. In this place where past, present, and future converged like tributaries to an ancient sea of eternity, Phelan's listeners found themselves standing not merely at a crossroads, but in every corner they dared step into. For time was no boundary, here it unfurled before them as endless meadows stretching beneath the stars. They beheld worlds that gleamed with histories lost and yet to be discovered, where marvelous sights beyond imagination awaited their eyes wide open under a sky embroidered by constellations of ancestors, dreams of firmament pulsating as one heartbeat echoing through the ages. Tonight was different. It felt like they had already journeyed to Eilean's era, not merely visiting but living his legacy that coursed within them all along, their voices a harmonic chorus with whispers of ancients past resounding in time's embrace. Phelan gestured grandly as he spoke the final words that had once been uttered by their forebear, Eilean himself for benediction to endure through generations, his spirit imbuing within them a strength and resolve unyielding against life's tempests, yet gentle enough not to quench hope's tender flame. With the night deepening around him like ink seeping into parchment, Phelan began a more tale where each word was as vital and precious as a rare bloom unfurling petals beneath Eilarion's guiding light. They could almost sense his presence amongst them now. The young ones held hands with one another in unity of purpose and spirit that day, their bond to the past intertwining like roots within fertile ground and anchor against time's relentless tide, seeking always for shore upon which it might rest, but seldonerily finding solace at last by returning homeward once more. They understood then they were not merely inheritors of stories. Their very souls had been woven into the fabric that Eilarion and his king crafted, or legacy beyond mere words or deeds, a lineage spanning lifetimes where each generation served as custodian to memories yet untouched by mortal hands. They were not simply listeners. They too held an ageless flame within their hearts that would continue to ignite the spirit of tales told and retold, or beacon for ages hence, guiding them forthwith in time's boundless sea, where horizons stretched beyond sight into realms uncharted by mortal eyes. As Phelan's voice trailed off like a melody fading upon the horizon of Dorn's first lighter in chapter 13, as Phelan's voice softened to a tender hum that seemed to resonate with the very essence of time itself, he gathered the young ones once more beneath an ancient willow whose leaves whispered secrets from centuries past whenever they swayed in evening breezes. With each story shared and memory relived, their hearts synchronized like celestial bodies adrift in a vast ocean sky, or harmonious dance choreographed by the ancestral spirits that roamed free among them on this singular day of communion when history embraced its children with open arms as if it were never apart. The willow bore witness to their unity, shedding gentle teardrops in honor of their reflections cast upon shimmering waters, mirrored tales yet untold, but destined for the lips that would carry them forth into eternity's embrace. Thus began a sacred rite wherein each child selected an elder whose spirit vibrated with echoes of valor and wisdom long past. They formed their circle, hands entwined like threads in life's intricate tapestry, a pledge to safeguard the stories as one would shield treasured heirlooms from a tempest's fury or sun-scorched days that could fade even gold into mute whispers. Phelan, with eyes like twilight and voice smoother than velvet drapes caressing olden windowsills on misty eves when daylight cedes to the lullaby of stars above, chose Eilarion as his chosen elder for today's tale or story that breathed life into forgotten corners where time itself seemed reluctant to tread. The young ones leaned closer, their breath synchronizing with Phelan's rhythmic pauses like the ebb and flow of a gentle stream lapping at ancient stones worn smooth by countless tales told before the mass silent audience bound in reverence for legends that span generations. As Eilarion spoke, his words were not merely sounds, but sparkling jewels cast into the waters of their souls to be lifted and brought forth as living memories. Each syllable a seed from which mighty oaks might someday rise in hearts brave enough to stand tall against tempests borne by shadows that sought only ruin. The air seemed thick with magic, perfumed scents carried on wings of yore herbs and blooms once prized for their healing properties, now laden upon the earth like remnants from a forgotten banquet where time had little claim over decay's insistent tread or joy's fleeting kiss. Together they traced Phelan's narrative across landscapes painted by imagination, a world born of dream and spun with threads plucked directly from the loom that wove their own fates into existence. Here stood a castle cloaked in verdant mosses where face spirits danced beneath twinkling constellations hidden within canopies' embrace. There lay forests whispering secrets of olden days when rivers sang with voices as clear and pure as crystal wellsprings. Midway through their journey across this realm woven from the gossamer strands of shared heritage, or place where every stone held a story etched deep within its heart, Eilarion's voice faltered not for lack, but perhaps because he felt them all as one with him. These children were no mere audience to his tales. Rather, they had become the living legacy that surged through their veins like rivers flowing into an ocean whose depths knew neither beginning nor end, an immortal stream where memory and dream fed upon each other's essence without restraint or fear of being drowned by time's relentless onward march. As the sun began its descent beyond horizons unseen, painting skies with hues that spoke more eloquently than any bard could proclaim or tapestry, where darkness was but a shadow cast forth from light's tender caress upon night's cool cheek. Eilarion felt the profound weight of his role. He knew he had gifted these children with an inheritance, that transcended tangible possessions or even lineage traced in blood. It was imbued within their spirits, a living chronicle to be recounted from age unto era, where humanity's ephemeral flame would never dim nor extinguish. With the first stars blinking awake, as if drawn forth by an unseen hand upon twilight's canvas or constellation of luminous witnesses to this sacred, as Einar watched over his circle of children with a tender gaze that flickered between each eager face and shimmering constellation above, he knew it was time to pass on another chapter of their shared history, a tale not bound by the flesh but thrived within every heartbeat. The gentle hums whispered through his lips as Einar began weaving words into a story beneath twilight's fading embrace. Tales were told, and bonds strengthened with each syllable that danced upon their ears like leaves in the wind on an autumnal eve when even time itself seemed to stand still. Once Einar started as his fingers trailed across ancient stones beneath a silvery moonlight-drenched sky. There was a world where mountains echoed with laughter and rivers sang ballads of olden times. There were places untarnished by sorrow or the taint of greed, and in this realm he leaned closer to his audience, as if revealing sacred secrets whispered only amongst kin. There stood an elder named Tyrannes, who guarded a powerful artifact or crystal that held within it not just light, but also wisdom from ages past. The children huddled together on moss-covered rocks beside the flowing riverbank as Einar's voice carried them to worlds unseen and histories unfathomed. The elder, with eyes like molten silver under his wise brow, furrowed not in discontent, but an everlasting quest for knowledge and understanding, that even eternity had its riddles meant only for the keenest of minds, willing to delve into the essence of existence beyond mere survival. One day Einar's voice lowered, mirroring a conspiratorial tone, as if sharing sacred law with an inner circle that knew too much about their world yet yearned deeper still for its mysteries. Tyrannes discovered whispers within the crystallar call to embark upon an odyssey beyond his solitary vigil. He sought out Elizur's grove, where flowers bloomed with dew as precious as any jewel, and trees bore fruits that tasted of pure joy. As Tyrannes journeyed through the realms, from valleys shrouded in mist to desert dunes kissed by starlight, or land without horizon or end, where time folded upon itself like a blooming flower's petals at dawn, Einar paused for effect as his story painted vistas so vast and radiant that they seemed otherworldly. He encountered beings of every imaginable form, from creatures cloaked in starlight to shadows with the gentleness of morning dew upon a leaf. And yet Einar's voice grew solemn as memories seeped through his words like twilight into night. Tyrannes learned that even guardians must eventually zero be their duties, for in seeking more than what was entrusted to him, or pursuit of knowledge veiled by the thrill of adventure, and whispers from an ancient past found a void within his soul. The crystal, once thought eternal as Tyrannes himself, Einar's voice trembled not with fear, but reverence for their shared history that stretched beyond countless lifetimes, yet felt timelessly present in the heart of each child before him, had begun to dim. Eternal light flickered and waned until at last it vanished entirely. But Einar's tone lifted as hope returned, like a warm embrace on an evening stroll through forgotten paths dappled with moonbeams that filtered through canopies of emerald leaves. The essence Tyrannes had sought, her wisdom far greater than the crystal itself, remained within him. For in his odyssey and subsequent solitude as guardian without artifact to wield against darkness or despair, he paused momentarily for a breath that seemed drawn from history's very air. Tyrannes discovered an inner light no external source could kindle. The elder taught this profound truth, that the greatest treasures are not held within crystals, but in boundless realms of love and compassion. His spirit carried forth through ages, where empires rose on sand, crumbled into dust beneath stormy seas, and kingdoms fell silent under the quiet march of time. As Einar's tale reached its poignant crescendo, his children listened with eyes wide, as if gazing upon horizons that stretched endlessly towards tomorrow's promise. They learned from Tyrannes' journey through solitude had become a pilgrimage of sorts, or quest for understanding that transcended mere physical travels across realms and kingdoms, venturing deep into territories untrodden by his footsteps before this day. Now he stood alone beneath the sky, where stars spun tales older than time itself. Their light, touching upon him like whispers from an ancient past, echoed through generations of children who had once been at play in these same fields and woods that now watched over him with a vigilant eye trees tall as towers against heaven's dome. In the days following his return he found no kinship among men nor solace from stone or steel. They were but temporary conveniences of civilization, too transient for one who sought an enduring legacy not in conquests won with swords and shields, but within souls kindled by love. He ventured to the heart of a meadow where flowers bloomed even under the moon's muted glow, their petals unfurling as if greeting him like old friends at last resting after his long journey through nights that stretched into eternity. It was here in this silent communion with nature that he first felt something akin to peace or calmness, so profound it threatened to swallow the very essence of who Taranis had become, leaving behind shadows for substance and echoes replaced by hearts beating beneath his chest. As months turned into seasons unmarked by time's rigid hand, he sought counsel with those rare souls whose wisdom transcended the ephemeral nature of worldly gain, wise hermits who dwelled in crevices between mountains and streams that whispered secrets only to those willing hearts brave enough to listen. They spoke not just of Taranis' quest, but shared their own journeys, tales threading through time like lifelines etched into the palms of hands, long cradling life's touch before it faded away. In one such exchange under a sky painted with hues that seemed to bleed themselves beyond recognition at twilight's approach, blues deep as drowning oceans, purples unfurling like royal cloaks of nightfall upon the horizon, a hermit named Illyria revealed her own story. She had once guarded a light not unlike Eilarion's, but born in solitude within herself after witnessing calamity's cruel embrace rip through communities with threads as thin and fragile as gossamer, yet holding tight to the essence of human spirit, resilience that refused defeat even when hope seemed nothing more than a spectre. Illyria spoke not just words, but sang the mad melody rich in undertones of loss interwoven by tenacity's tenacious threads, as if her voice were sculpting the very air into forms too delicate to hold, yet strong enough to bear witness against despair's relentless surge. Her songs reached Taranis at heartstrings resonant with memories not his own, but shared between them like a sacred bond or kinship forged from trials and triumphs over the ages that had shaped him as much as any crystal could claim to do so. Together they wandered through lands where water flowed backward along canyons sculpted by time's uncaring hand. Taranis felt strangely at home here among reflections not of his own visage, but that which nature had imparted upon him, a mirror to the soul he was becoming. One evening, as twilight deepened into a velvet-clad night, where dreams could be sown like seeds in fertile soil and harvested at dawn's first touch of light, Taranis came across an abandoned hermitage nestled within a copse that seemed to hold its breath. The air here was thick with the scent of ancient earth he once knew as child. Beneath open skies playing amidst these same trees now stood sentinel over his every move in this untamed sanctuary where time itself had decided not to tread heavily upon him, but rather whispered secrets through leaves and listened intently at the roots below. Inside he found no relics of power, or wealthily a simple hearth that seemed more like an altar dedicated solely to warmth's embrace on cool nights when darkness itself had been too heavy for candles alone not to kindle flame from within the soul's own furnace. Here he communed with his reflection in puddles left behind by raindrops that fell only once a year, each droplet's journey as Taranis sat by the hearth's glowing embers on that first night of rain in many years. He realized tonight was not about seeking warmth from outside, but finding it within himself and around him, with every flicker of flame reflected off his own image. The hermitage stood as a silent guardian over this moment, or sentinel to Taranis' solitude, where the world seemed too vast, its pace relentless in bustling cities outside these sacred woods that he had left behind for reasons long forgotten, but deeply buried within him like seeds waiting patiently beneath winter snow. The rain began as a trickle before transforming into an unyielding downpour. Droplets fell with purpose, each carrying stories of distant lands and times Taranis could only imagine through books. He once loved tales where heroes faced their fears in ways that mirrored his own struggle for peace within. The hermitage's puddles grew larger by the hour, as if holding together a pooling world underneath, one soaked with history and whispers of ancient times when man first learned to listen not just to words, but also to wind through leaves or interpretations from ripples in what a natural mirror that had shown him his own soul's complexities. Taranis knew the hermitage belonged as much to nature itself its very existence a testament of time standing still here within these woods, where he could commune with memories and dreams alike. It was like finding an untouched sanctuary, a place that did not rush him forward, but invited his breathing in syncopated beats echoed by the rhythmical drumming on nearby leaves. With each drop of rain, Taranis felt time's passage muted here, and he understood why this was a haven for reflection. It wasn't just about looking backward to see where one came from, but also forward to envision what could be sculpted by the hands that held life itself in tender care. He thought of his parents, how they had found solace together beside their own hearth before he was born, and now sat there as though watching over him, she with her gentle smile, always radiant, even when storms brewed on distant horizons, while father taught them to stand firm against the gales that tried to erode away their resolve. They were his mirror, reflections of strength in a world where such things could easily be obscured by shadows. Moments he cherished and feared as if they existed only within this sacred silence that wrapped around him like an old quilt knitted with threads from times both warmth-giving and somber. Taranis closed his eyes, the scent of rain mingling with earth's musty perfume filling his lonesome aroma. He knew to be as much about life itself being reborn after winter's cold sleep under snow blankets, or how it felt when first steps were taken beneath these very trees. He could almost hear the echoes of footsteps on leaves, faint laughter that had bounced through branches like sunlight glancing off watercoasts. He conjured with each heartbeat as if they sought him out amidst this living relic, where nature held its breath in anticipation, or perhaps a prayer for Taranis's journey ahead. It was then, during the night's deepest quiet, when thoughts seemed to settle themselves into his mind like dust after wind has passed through, and everything becomes still enough that one can hear silence itself speak her lullaby if you will. It urged him towards an understanding of self beyond reflections cast by mirrors or waters. Taranis realized in this moment, amidst the symphony orchestrated not just within his own heart, but also with nature's whispers through every leafy vein and each stone smoothed over time's tender touches, that he was home here, right where it mattered most to him, at peace. As dawn approached on its wayward path across the horizon, Taranis rose from his contemplation of self-reflection, born in nature's mirroring, and found strength not only within but around him too, like a tree whose roots dug deep into earth's embrace, providing sustenance to reach towards sky. The hermitage stood as if it was never abandoned, an enduring testament that even without relics of power or wealth, this place held something more precious, the ability for Taranis's soul to find itself at rest amidst time's ever-turning wheel, where every ending became a beginning, and within him lay all he had sought. With newfound clarity that came not with fanfare but quietly as sunlight spilling through canopy leaves, it was evident what in chapter 17 Taranis stood once more before the ancient stone circle that had whispered to his spirit since he'd first heard of its existence, a place where legend and reality intertwined like braided streams flowing into a river of truths untold. The air here always seemed different, charged with an ethereal energy, as if every grain carried centuries within it, telling tales not even the wind could echo loudly enough to carry across time's expanse. As he approached this hallowed ground where his journey had begun and ended many times over in a cycle of seeking after self-knowledge, each step upon sacred earth was measured by heartbeats rather than steps, each pause for breath taken with reverence, as if the very act itself were an offering to nature's altar. The sunrise peaked above the horizon like timid fingers reaching through night's velvet curtain, and Taranis felt within his chest a resonance that harmonized perfectly with its lighter warmth enveloping him as he gazed upon this familiar yet mystical sight, now bathed in hues of gold, promising another passage into an awakening. The circle stood undisturbed by the years, and time had etched itself on his face just as it did around these stone-steeped furrows, marking contemplations past mingled with lines that spoke to a future yet written upon him, each wrinkle holding echoes of laughter, tears shed in solitude, or camaraderie. Yet Taranis knew today he was not there for reminiscence, but reconciliation, a return home where his soul's compass pointed true north towards serenity and understanding, born anew from the ashes of yesterday's trials, like a phoenix rising to greet dawn. Beneath him stretched fields that had played host to countless sunsets witnessed by Taranis in solitude, these patches of land now serving not just for sustenance, but also sanctuary, where his spirit could commune with the earth's enduring whisper, a constant reminder he was never alone. In this moment, as Dorn unfurled its golden tendrils to caress each blade of grass and touch every dew-kissed petal, it seemed Taranis had arrived at an epiphany that bloomed within him with the graceful certainty only nature's patient tutelage could teach. His hands, once restless for answers beyond reach or grasping after illusions of grandeur tied to power and dominion over others, fates no held themselves lightly, as if by mere suggestion they were needed at all. His heartbeat slowed with the understanding that he no longer sought control but harmony. The hermitage, a place seemingly forgotten yet always waiting for one who understood its silent counsel and quiet strengths, laid bare not in stone nor splendor but warmth of shared existence amongst kindred spirits bound together by purpose beyond selfish desires or earthly possessions. It stood as testament to Taranis' journey where every ending folded seamlessly into a beginning, like the endless seasons that painted ever-changing landscapes upon which he had travelled. Within his chest swelled an unexpected courage or strength forged in fire and watered by wisdom's rain. It was not one born of conquest, but cultivated from understanding nature's eternal cycle where life sprouts, blossoms under sunlight, then returns to the earth whence it came. He realized that this sacred place had been his anchor all along her harbor in stormy seas and haven through trials by fire. Taranis now understood he was no stranger here, but rather a part of its story etched into every leaf, rock, brook, rune, flowing light, ancestral voices guiding him towards peace. And as the sun ascended higher, claiming skyline with an artist's hand painting clouds to match her masterpiece and casting long shadows where forgotten paths lay hidden amongst foliage that swayed knowingly under its touch, Taranis took one last look at this sacred circle. He was no longer a visitor or seeker, but homecoming's child returned from pilgrimage. His soul had learned to listen more intently, not just when he heard the voice of nature speaking in rustling leaves and babbling brooks, but through silence itself, where answers lay hidden beneath waves upon which thoughts could float without fear. He understood now that every end was a beginning foretold by time's relentless march forward. His heart echoed with stories whispering themselves into existence as they were told each day in as Taranis stood still amidst the sacred circle that had always been his sanctuary and home. He felt a gentle warmth embrace him like an old friend whispering secrets of life's enduring dance into his very being. The sunlight draped itself upon him in golden threads as if to weave new memories within its touch. Every strand was imbued with the essence of times past and promises yet unseen, intertwining with his soul like roots finding purchase deep within fertile soil. The air held a coolness reminiscent of dew upon emerald leads as Taranis let out a sire sound that seemed to meld into the symphony around him. It was no ordinary breath, but rather an echoing gust through ancient corridors, stirring memories from every corner where stones and branches bore silent witness. With each inhalation of this living airscape's perfume, he felt as if his lungs could drink deeply enough to fill the reservoirs that had sustained him since childhood under these boughs. Watchful eyes. The gentle rustling of leaves spoke not with words, but emotion, sir, language older than any Taranis himself understood, yet one which resonated within, clear as crystal brooks through sun-dappled meadows that had known his feet, and whispered secrets only to those who wander without purpose. Time seemed irrelevant here. Hours flowed like water in a stream, sometimes swiftly, rushing with urgency when the heart called for it, or slowing into tender trickles as Taranis would pause at moments of introspection within this verdant cathedral, where life's melody played endlessly. The world beyond had changed from his last visitation here. Seasons passed their roles and colors shifted like actors donning new costumes for the next performance on nature's grand stage, yet Taranis felt unchanged, as if time itself recognized him not merely a visitor, but an eternal part of this living mosaic. Underneath his fingertips lay damp earth that still remembered when it was once smooth, and yielded to the touch like honey flowing from Kumsat, testament to life's ability to heal, replenish itself after every storm passed through its domain, as Taranis had himself weathered many such tempests. The sacred circle knew his steps now. It was not just a place, but an entity that breathed in unison with him, her breath shared between ancient timbers and the sigh of leaves, all speaking to one another without words, yet understood by hearts attuned like Taranis's had become. His presence here wasn't accidental anymore. It was as if he were always meant to find his way back amongst these guardians that watched over humanity with eyes unclouded and wisdom unfathomable within their rings of life lived out before them for centuries past. The whispers grew softer, yet they carried weight or gentle pressure upon the chest wherein lay a heart learning to listen not just in hopes, but certainty that every ending was simply an overture penned by fate's hand awaiting its debut on tomorrow's stage. Tyrannes closed his eyes and let himself be led, guided forward into this sacred place of return, as the warmth from sunlight caressed him tenderly like a mother's touch upon her child after days spent apart in distant lands, where cultures had taught different songs, some to celebrate life's fleeting nature at his homecoming. It was as if time itself paused and beckoned Tyrannes forth on an everlasting journey within the eternal cycle of beginning-end. The ancient trees stood sentinel around him. Their sturdy trunks held stories in every grain that had seen countless moons waxed to fullness then ebb away into memories embraced. Tyrannes felt as if he belonged amongst them, a child born from the same earth they sprang forth upon when time itself was young. The brook beside him murmured tales of water that had danced over stones since before his ancestors walked this land. It spoke not just to passers-by, but conversed with Tyrannes about life's ebb and flow, sharing wisdom gleaned from the journey through countless rivers below, where mountains wept tears into its currents. And now he listened intently, as darkness began her gradual approach across the sky's canvas, without any hint of haste or concern for a timepiece's chime to mark passage. Tyrannes found solace in knowing that each day brought forth fresh stories ready to be told. As nightfall settled like a gentle blanket over Tyrannes' homeland once more, he nestled under an ancient oak whose sprawling roots seemed to cradle him in their enduring embrace. The stars above blinked into existence one by one, as if watching the world below with curious eyes of twinkling lighter, celestial audience that knew no borders or boundaries, and witnessed every tale unfold across time's boundless stage. Tyrannes, his heart heavy yet hopeful, felt a profound connection to these cosmic watchers who had borne silent testimony to the rise and fall of empires since before there were nations nor flags to them alone belonged secrets that history books could never capture in their finite pages. Each nightfall was an overture for stories untold, a time when shadows grew long but did not herald fears or threats. Instead, they whispered promises of tales and dreams to be spun beneath the watchful gaze of constellations that had been named by those who once called this place home. And herein lay Tyrannes' gift, the rare ability to listen more intently than any other soul in his lineage could claim, for within him flowed not just blood but a stream of ancestral whispers and echoes from an unbroken chain that stretched back through the mists of time. The moon above rose higher into its nightly arc as Tyrannes closed his ice knot to sleep immediately, like others might seek refuge in slumber's embrace, but rather allowing himself a momentary pause amidst life's relentless ebb and flow before he was ever meant to journey forth again. It seemed that time itself held its breath for him as the first hints of dawn began their slow crawl across the horizontal signal, not just marking another end, but also gently nudging Tyrannes towards his next chapter, one filled with paths untrodden and horizons yet to be discovered. Tyrannes had returned from distant lands, where he learned languages that sang different tunes of life's transient beauty, or traveler who could sip sweetness from each culture's cup as if it were his own birthright, a child born not just into the embrace of family but also to an inheritance grand and deep. These cultures had taught him songs with varied notes that celebrated existence in myriad ways. Their voices resonated within Tyrannes like echoes from different worlds converging upon the singular point where one soul could touch countless lives through shared understanding, empathy, and respect for life's delicate dance. As he rose to greet the new day with a heart both weary yet invigorated by his experiences, a broader journey that had woven threads of unfamiliar hues into the tapestry of who Tyrannes was becoming new this time would always be etched upon him like an indelible mark. The essence of far-off lands lived within, guiding him with gentle nudges toward where he might weave his own threads to join a pattern that transcended the sum of its parts and spoke instead in harmonies beyond mere mortal comprehension. The brook beside Tyrannes continued its ceaseless journey through ancient stones and routes, carrying tales from waters deep within mountain heartlands where ice clung like winter's last kiss upon verdant peaks, or lifeblood that coursed with the memory of seasons long past but never forgotten. Its murmurs held secrets too vast for words alone to contain. Tyrannes understood this as he listened intently, feeling within his spirit an echoing resonance from waters below where eagles once soared and now only whispered memories remained suspended like motes in sunlight that filtered through the canopy. Tyrannes knew well how fleeting time could be, its moments slipping away as silently as falling leaves, yet he found solace knowing each day brought forth fresh stories ripe for sharing with all who would listen, tales of love and loss, intertwined like vines upon this sacred earth, where man's footprint was but a tender imprint rather than an overbearing mark. And Tyrannes felt his place amongst these narratives, not as one that wrote them into permanence nor claimed ownership for ephemeral years. Instead, he existed simply to be part of the eternal cycler wayfarer whose heart beat in unison with countless others who sought refuge under canopies woven from sturdy branches and whispered secrets. The ancient trees stood sentinel around him, their gnarled limbs reaching skyward as if to embrace the sun's warmth that spilled through emerald leaves like bless as Tyrannes settled deeper into his thoughts beneath a sky painted with hues of twilight and gold. He closed his eyes for just a moment to gather his energy from around him, from every rustle in the leaves overhead that seemed like whispers shared between old friends reuniting. The forest had become an ancient symphony. Each creature played its part, as Tyrannes felt himself drawn into their delicate dance of life and time, where stories flowed freely with no regard for age or order, never-ending tale told in the softest murmurs among trees that stood guard over secrets. The night had begun to unfurl around him when a gentle breeze carried through Tyrannes's hair like threads of silver lace, weaving an invisible bond between sky and earth as he listened intently for new tales nestled within the hushes beyond his sensory reach. It was in these moments that Tyrannes found himself adrift on silent seas where time ebbed and flowed around him with a rhythm all its own, guided by heartbeats syncopated across species a melody of existence he felt compelled to honor as custodian rather than creator. Within the hollows carved out by history's hand lay remnants not just of Tyrannes' journey but those who had wandered before him, their stories etched into bark and soil or mosaic that painted every step he took as an act integral to a greater whole. It was here, under the watchful eyes of ancient sentinels, where his own story intertwined with legends whispered by winds, through canopies woven from sturdy branches, their secrets unveiled in motes dancing like dust caught upon rays that spilled warmth into Tyrannes. So, the forest floor cradled the footprints of generations past, or testament to life's transient dance, and its enduring essence captured within each imprint left behind by those who walked this sacred earth, their spirits as much a part of it now as they had ever been before, a mosaic that painted every step Tyrannes took upon his journey. And with the rising sun came promises, first golden rays piercing through emerald leaves like blessings bestowed anew each day to remind him and all who shared this space, including those yet unborn whose hearts still sought solace among these whispered halls of nature's own law. As Tyrannes opened his eyes once more beneath a sky slowly brightening with the first light of dawn, he was drawn away from thoughts that might have stolen into night's embrace, and instead found himself returning to watchful trees whose branches stretched out as if offering passage through time itself, a bridge between what has been told in hushed reverence within these woods, where man's touch upon the land remained but a tender imprint. It was beneath this canopy that Tyrannes had often felt most at home, for here he found himself not just witness to history's embrace of life and loss woven into its fabric as surely as if his own fingers were stained with tales untold, or tapestry where man's presence faded like mist upon rising sun or the setting moon. And though Tyrannes carried no book nor voice recorder within him, he knew that in this place of eternal cycle and whispers shared by all beings who called these woods home, his heart beat as one with stories yet to unfold, or wayfarer on a path both ancient and ever new, where every step was echoed across seasons past, but never forgotten. As morning's first light bathed the world in warmth that whispered promises of life renewing itself anew upon this sacred earth, Tyrannes rose with it, feeling lighter vessel for stories yet to be told and shared through whispers carried by leads on gentle wind currents beneath ancient trees. For him was no simple role as keeper or teller. Rather, he served merely as a conduit between tales olden and those that lay just beyond the horizon of tomorrow's sunrise, where every dawn bore witness to new narratives ready for Tyranny's ear, a silent custodian whose existence itself became part of an ever-turning cycle. Here in these woods, time held no sway over him as it did others who sought permanence within its grasp. Instead, he revelled fully and without reserve in the ephemeral nature that defined his path through life, a wayfarer whose heart beat with every pulse of history's enduring song. And though Tyrannes knew not how long this journey might last, nor where it would lead beyond canopies woven from sturdy branches and whisper, as Dorn's gentle fingers painted strokes of gold across Tyrannes' skin and tousled locks, he settled once more beneath an oak whose roots had touched histories untold within these sacred woods for a millennium or more. Each morning began just as the last one ended, with him cradled in nature's tender embrace. The ancient trees whispered secrets of forgotten epochs, and Tyrannes listened with reverence to their tales that resonated through his marrow like ancestral heartbeats, echoing from a time before history was even conceived by humankind's fragile mindset. On this particular morning, as the light played hide-and-seek amidst leaves and shadowed glen, Tyrannes felt an unusual stirring within his soul, a yearning not just for stories but to contribute one of his own creation that could travel with time's windy breath through these woods. The tale he sought was neither grandiose nor laden with hero's conquest. It would be simple, yet profound enough in its essence to mirror the quiet wisdom observed from nature, and etched within Tyrannes himself after countless seasons of wandering amongst this living archive. It began on an evening when autumn had begun weaving her russet touch through every leaf for night, where stars seemed eager for their chance upon a canvas darkened by approaching winter's breath. Yet, untouched in his heart, Tyrannes sat beside the brook that meandered like time itself. The water flowing over smooth pebbles told him of resilience and continuous motion, how it always found its way around obstacles, without complaint or haste, a trait he wished to embody as well within himself beyond these woods, for in his life's unfoldment there were moments that mirrored the relentless course of water over stone. The next chapter would encapsulate Tyrannes' realization about how each season shaped him, while simultaneously reflecting on others, how spring taught patience with its nurturing rain, summer instilled endurance through long days under scorching suns, and the fall demonstrated acceptance as it shed leaves like regrets to be let go. Winter's cold would serve not only chilling but also a time of introspection, where Tyrannes' soul could rest within snowy silence that blanketed all sound, offering him respite among whispers carried on icy wind currents, and frozen water patterns from mosaic etched upon the ground. As he pondered his own reflections through these seasonal lenses, while ensconced in nature's bosom before dawn broke into its daily routine, Tyrannes understood that this tale was not merely about time or seasons, but something deeper and more personal, a narrative of self-discovery. It would be a tribute to the silent strength he had found along his wayward path through life's meandering trails, how even without seeking permanence, as these woods neither aged nor faded from memory with time passing by, Tyrannes' essence remained evergreen and unmarred within its embrace. THR0M would be the day when a new dawn brought forth not just light, but clarity to his purposer's story that could inspire others who wandered through their own personal woods of life's journey, seeking solace in nature as inspiring tranquility and wisdom, imparting lessons without preaching. And Tyrannes would know then he was not just a keeper or teller, but an integral thread within the tapestry that this sacred woodland itself wove with time, or custodian whose heartbeat synchronized naturally to its perpetual cycle of life, death, and rebirth. Amidst ancient trunks lying side by side like sentinels in silent vigil over their own history etched within each grooved bark ridge, Tyrannes would share his tale with the mass story that honored the intertwining lives of all beings who tread upon this sacred earth. He spoke not to these trees, but through a communion born from shared existence under sky's vast dome and soil's nurturing cradle, acknowledging their role as steadfast companions along his path, or keeper whose own tales were deeply rooted in the very essence of this living forest. The tale Tyrannes sought to share would be one that celebrated life's simple truth. Existence itself is a journey not towards an end destination, but into deeper understanding and interconnectedness with all things seen and unseen, felt within every heartbeat, echoing through the ages beneath these time-worn boughs. his story a humble offering to this ancient woodland that had whisper, as Tyrannes settled into a fallen log that served as his cradle of thoughts each nightfall within this sacred woodland. He whispered to it secrets only known by old souls, or tale woven from threads spun with reverence for the natural world and its timeless cycles. The trees around him stood tall like silent guardians over history's whispers. Their leaves rustled gently in agreement, as if they were tuning into his voice, each one a living testament to countless seasons passed through by life forms great and small that had come before, and the enduring legacy yet unwritten. In this chapter of Tyrannes' tale, he begins to understand more deeply how every leaf fallen from these mighty sentinels contributed not just as decay but as nourishment for future growth, a vital component in an eternal cycle where nothing truly ends. Here within this place only transforms and shifts form. The air was perfumed with the earthy scent of damp soil mixed by woodland creatures, each one playing their role unnoticed yet crucial to maintaining balance under moonlit canopies that filtered sunlight into a kaleidoscope on fallen leaves below, a reminder from nature itself that even in darkness there is light. Today's journey for Tyrannes had been unusually contemplative, as he stumbled upon an ancient hollow nestled amid the roots of two grand sequoias standing like elderly kin to one another at the woodland's heart, or silent chamber, where time seemed paused in its passage. Inside this natural reliquary lay a small cluster of mosses thriving, their soft green tendrils creating an emerald tapestry that held moisture and life within each dew-kissed frond. They were as old here, too, but had never seen the sun's direct touch. Tyrannes knew then how these very hollows once served not just shelter for tiny lives, from mice to minuscule owlings whose stories intermingled with his own, a silent audience who might have held their breath in wonder as he recounted tales that reverberated through the ages beyond this woodland. With nightfall came a symphony of crickets and katydids, each note punctuating Tyrannes' voice like soft percussion on an old record player. It was nature's own backdrop for storytelling, a comforting lullaby that promised sleep to all who listened. He spoke not only with his words, but through the unspoken language of shared existence, a communion between keeper and forest, where each rustling leaf seemed like an affirmation nodding along in understanding, or perhaps playful amusement at tales told by human lips, or dialogue spanning eons as old as time itself. As he continued to weave his narrative beneath the scrolling arms of ancient oaks that whispered secrets only they could comprehend, Tyrannes' voice became a thread linking all life forms within this sacred space, from bustling bees returning for one last harvest before winter's embrace, to dappled sunlight dancing through leaves in joyous abandon during the brief respite of spring. It was here that he unveiled tales about how everything, seen and unseen, shared an essence so fundamental to existence it transcended individual lifespans or seasons, cycles, stories where each creature played a part in this grand designer piece on nature's intricate mosaic, crafted by hands not of flesh but spirit. The woodland creatures themselves seemed drawn into his tales, their curious eyes reflecting the twinkle of stars above, as if to listen more keenly through ears that heard only wind and silence. He spoke now with a gentle reverence for every life form's journey within this living tapestry, a tale where all beings were interwoven strands contributing equally to its beauty. Tyrannes shared how each bird's night flight painted streaks of silver across the sky, as if they carried dreams from one world into another. He told stories about foxes whose amber eyes glinted with wit and mischief when shadows grew long under moonlit skies, each character a vital hue within this natural palette. The journey through his storytelling led Tyrannes to the river that snaked its way like silver ribbon across verdant meadows, where fish darted between stones as if in silent applause for tales told beneath their watery realm. Here he spoke of how it mirrored life's flow, predictable yet purposeful. He narrated anecdotes about the playful otters that raced along its banks with joyous abandon, reminding all listeners in Chapter 23 of Tyrannes' journey through tales spun from threads so delicate they could only be woven in a land where reality held hands with legend. He paused for but an instant before continuing his narrative beneath the canopy that seemed to listen more intently, as if it too were eager to hear stories. The woodland creatures had become silent witnesses of history and myth intertwined, their lives etched into every word Tyrannes shared with them tonight. a night when stars shone brighter than they ever had before in centuries past or would again for ages yet unseen. The moon hung low as the tale unfolded further among ancient trees where whispers of old were often caught by winds that carried wisdom from worlds beyond their own silent pact to protect and nurture this hidden sanctuary, a place Tyrannes called home, not just for body but soul. And so it was on nights like these, when the veil between what is known and unknowable thinned, where spirits of yore could find a voice once more in living forms that echoed their essence across time's vast expanse. He spoke now with an even gentler reverence, his words painting pictures not just on minds, but upon the very air round the matte tapestry, so rich and vibrant it seemed to pulse beneath Tyrannes's fingertips as he wove narratives together like a master artisan before his easel. The creatures of this mystical woodland, each with their own unique place within the grand design that unfolded in these tales, or dance where every being played its part, and no role was deemed minor or trivial to the overall splendor. Tyrannes spoke now as one who understood such balance deeply etched into his very soul, as he wove through stories of how beetles, humble yet industrious architects beneath fallen leaves, built homes with walls strong enough for generations but softened by earthen hues to match the earth itself, her testament that strength and beauty need not come from grand gestures or towering structures. He reminded all who listened of how these tiny creatures were pillars upon which stood greater worlds, their existence a cornerstone in an unending cycle where life began at seed and ended as dust once more returned to the soil for rebirth, a circle so complete yet continuously renewing that it seemed eternal. It was then Tyrannes's stories turned towards the great river itself, this body of water coursing through realms both seen and unseen, its waters a mirror reflecting not just visages, but souls who had sought solace or adventure along its banks across eons, her constant companion to those brave enough to listen to tales that spoke beyond mere words. The otters raced upon the surface with laughter as light, their playful spirits untouchable even by sorrow's depth. Tyrannes shared how these little beings reminded him of youth's carefree essence and mirth amidst life's trials, or parallel to human joy that seemed almost a gift from the spirit realm itself. And so, as night deepened into early morning light filtering through canopies, weaving golden threads across dark tapestries below them, Tyrannes wove his final tale for these woodland friends before retiring beneath their sheltering boughs to dream of worlds within and beyond the reach of mortal eyes. He spoke now with an understanding that stories are not mere echoes from times long past, but living streams feeding into rivers flowing ever onward, a reminder that tales carried by wind, water, or whispered in moonlit secrecy were threads vital to maintaining this intricate web where every creature's existence mattered. Tyrannes shared a story of an ancient tree so wise it had been sought out for counsel throughout the ages. Its roots delved deep into histories, both joyous and sorrowful, drawing forth wisdom that was more than just knowledge, but essence itself, a testament to how everything connected in this wondrous world. As he closed his tales, with a respect held dearly by all who dwelled within these woods, Tyrannes reminded them of the importance of every heartbeat's echo through time and nature's boundless embrace that ensured their collected story would continue to grow, a grand design where each creature played its part in this living mosaic crafted by spirit. With a final glance upon his audience, who had become more than just listeners, but kin beneath the boughs of ancient guardians, Tyrannes promised them that as long as stories were told and heard amidst their shared home within these enchanted woods, or promise woven into every as night embraced their enchanted forest with its velvety darkness and silver moonbeams danced between leaves, a gentle breeze wove through Tyrannes's tales like threads of silk among memories. The creatures nestled in the comforting shadows beneath ancient trees listened intently as he recounted their shared history, the rise and fall of mighty empires that once encroached upon this sacred land, whispered legends of star-crossed lovers who roamed these very woods, with heavy hearts now entwined forever. Tyrannes spoke next of an era when the forest's guardians were young, their kind yet wise and strong enough to challenge invaders through guile rather than might alone, for they understood that true strength lay within harmony, a lesson taught by old Willow-weep, who sang with voices deep as roots running into the heart of Gaia herself. The woodland denizens had learned from her melodies how unity and compassion could shield them against greed's sharp claws, forging an alliance that would ripple through their lineage like a steadfast current in time's streams. With the dawn came stories of olden times, when dragons soared above these lands, magnificent creatures bound by ancient pact to protect against dark forces, threatening balance and peace, their iridescent scales reflecting sunlight as they patrolled endless horizons until stars guided them back into sleep. Even then Taranis' voice would not falter. It was the resonant sound that carried warmth through bone-deep chills of winter nights, when younglings huddled together, hearts beating in synchrony with shared dreams and comforting tales told by firelight or tradition as vital to their spirits as sap flowed within ancient trees. He spoke now of the silent ones, ethereal wanderers who tread lightly upon earth's tender skin, but whose whispers on wind were felt in every rustle and sigh throughout this hallowed forest. They taught that even when seen not by eye alone could one perceive their presence as if each flutter of bird feather or shimmering dewdrop carried a fragmented tale from realms unseen. Their ethereal dance across the firmament was an eternal testament to life's fleeting beauty and impermanence, urging all within these woods to cherish every moment, as they would hold precious water in times of drought, for memories were their sustenance when days turned into years. Through Taranis' words journeyed the creatures backward across a tapestry woven with threads of joy and sorrow, for he spoke not only of battles fought but also peaceful truces brokered by wise councils that convened under moonlit canopus or testament to their unyielding belief in diplomacy over discord. The tales brought forth laughter from hidden burrows as mischievous sprites learned the value of merriment, for they knew well how lightness could ease heavy hearts, even amidst times when shadows grew long and dark intentions threatened to eclipse their joyful spirits like sudden storms clouding a clear sky. With every word Taranis shared came revelations about interconnected fate, how the lives of elves in distant cities mirrored those nestled here amongst whispering pines, how mermaids' songs resonated with dolphins leaping from ocean depths to touch seashores kissed by golden sands. He unveiled a world where every pulse and flutter, each beat of wing or wisp of breath was part of an orchestration vast as the cosmos, a reminder that they all danced upon this stage not alone but together with kin both near and far across realms seen by none save those who believed. As his voice dipped low to mirror evening's approach, Taranis wove stories tinged with nostalgia for days when druids walked these paths as custodians or sacred link between earthly bounds and the spiritual expanse that lay beyond. He spoke of times before time itself was measured by tickings heard not just in clockwork, but felt within one's very soul. He imparted wisdom from ancient scripts etched into stone, where words, once spoken, were now silent prayers for guidance as seasons cycled through the wheel's endless revolution or promise of continuity like leaves returning to branches each springtime after winter's retreat. Within Taranis' tales flowed streams that carried echoes from forgotten realms, where once mighty sorceresses held council with fire sprites and summoners communed in chapter 25 of his chronicle. Taranis continued to unfurl tales that embraced listeners in a quilt woven from threads of ancient wisdom and ethereal beauty. He spoke now with eyes closed as he let memories seep into the present moment like dew upon morning grasses. It was time for resting souls to drift toward dreams where they might find solace amongst the stars or rejoin their ancestors in silent council under moonlight's embrace. He began with the tale of two sister Ceres and Lysidra who dwelled within this very land he stood upon centuries prior, when magic coursed through every vein, as much here on earth's surface as it did amongst the cosmic void above their heads or in the deepest trenches beneath seas. The siblings were said to converse with nature itself. They could hear its heartbeat and understand whispers carried by wind among trees, a gift Taranis cherished deeply, for he saw within them an echo of his own communion with this world's soul. Eris had always been drawn towards the mountains that cradled valleys like a mother's embrace. She found her solace in their stoic presence and felt at home upon wind-kissed peaks where eagles danced on thermals, tracing paths across skies painted with sunsets. Lysandra, however, was enchanted by the emerald expanse of forests that spread like a sea unto itself. She loved to walk barefoot beneath canopies heavy with life's murmurous symphony conducted upon moss-covered earth and dappled light filtering through ancient oaks. It wasn't until one fateful autumn, when the sisters had wandered far from their ancestral home, seeking understanding of nature's eternal dance, that they stumbled across a glade where reality seemed to fold upon itself a pocket universe within which time and space held hands with each other in tender embrace. Within the sacred clearing stood an ancient oak so grand it appeared as if the forest had birthed its own heart from soil richly imbued with magic. Around them flowers of every imaginable hue bloomed unabated throughout seasons, without end or beginning or testament to life's persistence and resilience. Eris found herself drawn into a glade where the air shimmered like spun gold under sunlight that seemed trapped within iridescent leaves. There she would stand still as statuesque figures took form from refracting light, ephemeral guardians of this hallowed place. Lysandra was often found in another part of the glade where waters ran clear and deep enough to mirror not only her reflection, but that which lingered between realms. Here she could commune with spirits bound within water, their voices as gentle murmurs upon rippling surfaces or echoes beneath a moon's caress. As Tyrannes spoke of these sisters and how they came together to weave spells from the very essence of nature herself that granted them access only when hearts were pure and intentions aligned with Earth's own rhythm, he felt his voice grow hoarse and echo within himself as he neared the end. He spoke now in hushed tones about how Lysandra's touch had once called forth a bloom so rare that it graced this glade for decades before disappearing into legend. Its petals were said to hold secrets of their world's creation, stories locked within each cell yet untouchable by all save those who dared look upon them with eyes clean from malice or desire. He recounted how Eris whisper had once roused an ancient wyvern that slept beneath the mountain range where they now walked. It was a creature of both beauty and terror, as much misunderstood as feared her guardian, whose heart ached for companionship, but could not be tamed by human hands or even those born from two lovers like Eris and Lysandra. Their bond had been an offering to the wyvern that day. In their shared silence of understanding between kin, a pact was formed without words or promise, carried forth through generations as they wandered these lands together until time itself relinquished its reign over them all. As he spoke softer still and his voice faded into the gentle hum that only accompanies sleep's approach on quiet nights, Tyrannes shared how this sacred bond had become their strength, how it intertwined with nature's rhythm to protect against forces both seen and unseen, for in unity lay a power beyond measure. And so in chapter 26 of their endless journey through whispering forests and beneath moonlit skies, Tyrannes found solace in sharing tales with Lysandra as they nestled beside a tranquil stream that meandered lazily to join the ocean's mighty embrace. The water was cool against his skin. It mirrored the night sky above while offering respite from their ceaseless travels, and he felt its gentle caress lull him into drowsiness as they sat in companionable silence beside each other on a weather-worn bench of mossy stone. "The bond we share," Tyrannes began softly, his voice threading through the air like silver filament between two hearts, begins with whispers from our souls that spoke to one another without words. He paused for just a moment as he recalled their first encounter under an amethyst twilight, or meeting of eyes wide with wonder and lips sealed by mutual respect. From then onward had been the start of something extraordinary, woven into every threadbare cloak they wore and each shared breath that danced between them like a tender melody upon their tongues. It was as if love itself sought to manifest in full splendor within these two kindred spirits. "Lysandra," he continued with the quiet reverence of one who understood depths beyond words, "we were born from shared secrets and unspoken promises or pact that transcended our mortal forms." It had been during a moonless night when Eris' voice first roused an ancient wyvern beneath their very feet. Its scales shimmered like emerald fire as it rose in majestic silence, casting long-reaching shadows across the land where they now walked. The creature of both dread and allure bore witness to this unparalleled alliance, a pact between a human woman touched by divine grace and an enigmatic wyvern with eyes reflecting wisdom hard-earned through eons of solitude beneath stone-cold mountains, its heart aching for connection. As Tyrannes' voice trailed off into the lullaby that only true love could sing to one another when embraced in moonlight and shadow alike, song woven from dreams spun by fates unknowable even unto themselves, he shared how their bond had become an anchor, steadying them against tempests both literal and metaphorical. He spoke of times spent cradling the wounded wyvern as it succumbed to its curse-ridden existence at times, when Eris touch soothed pain deeper than bone. Moments that tethered their spirits together across realms, intertwining destinies with threads invisible yet unbreakable. "We are guardians," he whispered into Lysandra's ear as they watched the stars dance above them in a silent ballet of cosmic splendor and audience to worlds beyond mortal ken. We stand vigilant against those who would exploit our land's fragile beauty for darker ends." He imparted tales spun from legends old as time, wherein beings, both benevolent and malevolent, sought dominion over the earth's ceaseless struggle that often tore at their souls with cruelty inexcusable. Their shared purpose became a mantle they carried forth upon every step taken through forests thickened by whispers of ancient spells, across fields where crops swayed like ocean waves frozen mid-tumble, and towards mountains draped in snow as white as the purity within their hearts, all with Lysander's hand clasping his firmly on one side, while Eris' gentle touch caressed him tenderly from beneath. As Tyrannes recounted tales of unity between beings disparate and diverse of very essence, that had come to define them as a trinity upon which the world itself depended for balance, he shared how their sacred bond provided strength against forces unseen, strife born not just from malice, but also despair. For in those times, when shadows threatened too deeply into darkness's heart, and hope flickered feebly amidst uncertainty, it was this trio of souls that stood resolute, a testament to the power inherent within kinship itself, their love serving as beacon against encroaching gloom. "Our journey is one without end," Tyrannes murmured into Lysandra's ear, and felt her embrace him tighter, as if she too shared his vision of an eternal path upon which they would forever wander hand in hand, or rather heart to soul, for the world we protect will always need guardians like us. And so as Tyrannes and Lysandra stood atop a hill that had seen centuries of sunsets painted in hues of gold and crimson, they shared one last look before descending into their journey, once again path well trodden, yet always anew with each step taken. Their hands touched briefly as if to acknowledge the cycle's perpetual nature, a ritual that had become part of them now. Below lay Eris, whose eyes mirrored not just his essence but also their deepest fears and hopes, her beacon in her own right against encroaching darkness. Their trio was more than kinship forged by circumstance. It transcended the physical realm as they sought to weave a fabric of peace across lands, torn apart not just by war, but also despair, that seeped into even the hardest souls' hearts like poison through veins. They had become symbols or trinity bound together against chaos and calamity with threads spun from empathy's loom, each act of kindness a stitch in their masterpiece, strengthening not just themselves, but all that they touched within the world's weary heartbeat. In times past, where shadows threatened to choke out life itself beneath darkened skies, and hope lay dying amongst ruins, Eris had been there with a balm for wounds both visible and veiled, her touch capable of knitting broken spirits back together as easily as mending flesh. Tyrannes's tales were the tapestries upon which people found unity, his voice weaving stories that bound cultures in understanding, where once they only saw difference, if their shared humanity a melody harmonizing discordant notes into one resounding chorus of coexistence. And then there was Lysandra, whose heart's purity had seen her through the bleakest night, when light seemed an impossible dream to grasp upon. Waking from sleep's embrace, she became their guiding starlight in darkness itself. Her hands held firm as she caressed them both into a trance of mutual solace, sharing not just touch but also visionary courage that promised the world was more than it appeared on its crestfallen countenance. As they descended toward where two rivers mingled like old friends and ancient oaks whispered secrets to one another, their footsteps carried them forward with a purpose as steady and sure as destiny's hand upon their shoulders, reminding that the world needed protectors who understood loss could only be overcome when shared. They reached into Eris' satchel, where she kept an amulet of olden times of stone imbued with echoes from a forgotten age, and shimmering like captured starlight against her skin, which Tyrannes had gifted to them upon their first journey together. It was as much about the past they held dearly, but also foretelling what might yet come. "Let us venture forth once more," Lysandra said softly, with a smile that reached beyond mere words, their lips barely grazing in anticipation of a new discoveries and shared tales. Her embrace around Tyrannes was one last testament to unwavering commitment, their bond the very essence upon which not just they but also hope itself thrived. They looked into each other's eyes, or silent pact that no matter where fate led them or what trials lay ahead in this ceaseless journey of guardianship. Tyrannes would recount tales of unity, Eris offered solace and healing for body and soul, alike as Lysandra's purity guided their path. "Our world is a complex tapestry," she whispered to her companions, her truth they had come to embody through trials and triumphant moments that painted the history of human endeavor, echoing with laughter in joyous times, but also sighs when hearts ached from sorrowful loss. They were not just protectors. They lived within their tales as characters whose actions bore ripples across time's expanse, a testament to strength born through shared burdens and the resolve of united spirits against despair's advance, where fear was but a shadow that once loomed over them all, only now it flickered less fiercely in their wake. As they made camp beneath an ancient tree, whose roots delved deep into secrets long buried, its branches reaching skyward like fingers pleading for tales to be told of days when the earth itself was young and full of wonder, Tyrannes began weaving a new story, one where even in this night there existed light born from shared dreams. The trio gathered, as they always did. The moon's gentle glow cast silvery patterns on their faces as Tyrannes began his tale under a blanket of stars, each luminary nodding with its own light in quiet agreement to listen and understand. It was an invitation not only for the company they shared, but also from the spirits that dwelled within this mystical forest or place, where reality mingled freely with legend among ancient whispers carried by night breezes through gnarled branches of a towering oak, whose leaves rustled in approval as if to say these stories were their own. Tyrannes spoke first. "Our journey has been long and filled with the myriad hues that life paints upon our path, golden yellows, when joy was plentiful like harvests bountiful, yet also muted grays during times of despair where shadows grew heavy on hearts. Our trials have carved scars into us as much as they've sculpted our strengths." Eris closed her eyes and hummed a melody that flowed like the soft stream beside which their camp lay hidden, its waters clear, but for occasional reflections of light dancing on the surface. Lysander traced patterns in the dirt with an outstretched finger, a remembrance not just of journeys past or dreams yet to come, but also a grounding gesture that tethered them all, her touch as healing and protective as their very essence had become through adversity. As Tyrannes weaved the beginning threads into his tale, with deliberate slowness, her journey of two nations once torn apart by strife brought together under an olive branch now firmly held between them, a bandage for wounds unseen but deeply felt, he watched as eyes grew heavier and breaths deepened in synchrony. The story was one that spoke not just to their spirits, but also whispered of the world beyond, a realm where unity could be both fragile bloom or enduring flower within a shared garden's caretaking hands. They listened, enraptured by his voice as it painted scenes from histories and futures yet unwritten. Tyrannes knew that these tales were not merely for entertainment, but served to fortify the bond between them, a foundation of trust upon which they could rely when fears sought entrance into their hearts. With each word, a layer was peeled back on hardships faced, revealing resilience and courage as vibrant colors that adorned Tyrannes' narrative tapestry, with every shared experience etched in memory like runes of old upon the landscape itself. Tyrannes paused at times to let Eris share her wisdom, or melody born from a wellspring deep within, clear and pure as mountain spring water, that soothed not just soul limbs but troubled minds. Lysander's presence was like sunlight chasing away the remnants of night, with rays gentle yet unwavering in their warmth. Each shared knowledge further fortified them against life's tempests, weaving a net that caught moments and lessons alike to ensure they were never adrift amidst chaos waves alone. The tale was one where magic intertwined with the mundane, a reminder of how even in places untouched by enchantment there existed extraordinary connections between souls, as if spun from threads invisible yet impenetrable to those not meant for its embrace. These were tales that bound them together more tightly than any physical chains could ever hope to form, or shared history rich and textured like the very fabrics of their garb. They journeyed through epochs recounted, where empires rose in ambition only to crumble under hubris' weight. They traveled alongside explorers whose footprints marked not just foreign soils, but also indelible imprints on the hearts that follow it, a history punctuated by moments of awe and humility before forces beyond human control. Tyrannes wove such stories delicately, like strands in their shared tapestry, where each thread was as vital to its integrity as they were one another's strength. The story unfolded across the canvas of night, or narrative that traveled through realms both grandiose and intimate. It spoke of alliances forged not by convenience but necessity, revealing how unity often sprang from a wellspring deeper than shared bloodlines or common language, yet as powerful in binding people together. Taranes was the keeper of this history now being told, or guardian, whose very essence was interwoven with tales that echoed through time's vast corridors.